we are there.
Yes, so the backup plan was, we can move to Zoom in case, but I hope we're fine on this one.
Okay, so just hold on for another 2 minutes. And once I give you guys a heads up, we will go live. We've already gone live, but we're just seeing how is it coming on the broadcast. So I will let you guys know just in a bit.
Sure.
Okay, so yes, I think I'm just getting. Yes, awesome. We are live. All over to you guys.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to all the participants and our esteemed speakers. Thank you for joining us at the launch of the second edition of Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industries PR and Digital Marketing Council's iLEAD survey. My name is Mo Chakravarti, and I am a council member and coincidentally also lead the iLEAD survey initiative of our council. To begin with, let me start by acknowledging the efforts of our survey team, comprising of senior women communicators like Neha Singhvi, Cheryl D'Souza Wadia, Manali Pilankar, Pooja Trihan, Megha Shrimali, Charu Raizada, Barnali Das, Tarunjeet Ratan, Namita Sharma, Neha Mishra, and of course, our backbone, Kavita Lakhani, National President of WICCI PR and Digital Marketing Council, for their unstained effort of this initiative. Currently, no other Chamber of Commerce in India, CII, FICCI, or ASSOCHAM, has a representation for the communication sectors in particular. Thus, this is a unique initiative of its kind. But what's the objective behind? Let's deep dive. Ladies and gentlemen, today, gender equity as a problem exists and is established across industries, including that of communications. Women enter the communications industry in large numbers. However, they drop out of their careers mid management levels. At the Council, our aim is to ensure that women in communications are inspired and equipped to stay in their careers and, most importantly, reach the highest level, that is, if they aspire to do so. In 2021, we introduced our marquee property to bring to the forum the key issues that women are facing. We introduced the iLEAD Women's Leadership Survey, which investigated about the key gaps in the gender equity problem. We talked about policy gaps, mindset gaps, skill set gaps. We attempted to understand the roadblocks and prescribed a transformative framework for the organizations to take the next steps. Moving forward, today, our second edition is all set to take off. We want to understand now, are organizations really ready for women to lead? We want to move away beyond the talking and get to the actions. We have captured perspectives and tangible actions that CXOs and HR leaders of communication firms, inclusive of advertising, journalism, digital marketing, content, and public relations, can take it forward. We feel the problem will be best addressed if senior leadership are able to invest their time and immediately act. We believe actions are needed now and the ecosystem must come together. We are so grateful that an entire ecosystem of our community partners have come together to support us. We thank our partners who have helped make this vision a reality. Like to initiate my gratitude to our knowledge partner, Akshaya Vijay Lakshmi from the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, our brand synergy partner, Koto, research partner, Imagined Reality Interactive, comprising of founders Seema Paul and Mani Jolie, industry partner, PRCAI, and Advertising Agencies Association of India. With that, let me kick off our panel discussion where we will host an interesting discussion and delve into the insights of our iLEAD survey. We will also post the survey details on our handles. Do watch out. So, welcoming our three panelists, let me get to a quick introduction for all of them. Starting with Aparna Achrekar. Aparna is the co-founder of Koto by eWorld, which is a social community platform based on Web3 principles exclusively for women, built on the promise of consent and continual ownership. Welcome, Aparna, to the panel.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you. I move to Sunanda Chak, the Chief Operating Officer at 4 Minute Mile Marketing Services Private Limited. Sunanda is an experienced professional with 2 decades of experience moving from technology and innovation-led companies like CA Technologies to a full-fledged digital marketing agency. She has, in that sense, seen both sides of the coin and is a very, very articulate speaker. Thank you, Sunanda, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Mo. It's such a pleasure being here. Thanks.
Thank you. And of course, our dear friend Prasad Sangameshwaran, editor, Economic Times, brandequity.com. Prasad, thank you always for supporting us in our initiatives. And as Prasad likes to call, he owes a 2 decade plus career in journalism to two women editors who gave him the initial break and mentored him to become a leader of what he is today. Thank you, Prasad, for joining
Thank
us.
you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, panelists. With that, let me just dive into straight to a panel discussion that I'm really looking forward to. The first question, I would like to know a little bit about you because it's important that our audience get to know you better. So if I may just want to go round robin and ask each one of you, if you can just articulate about your journey. What has it been like, to be a leader and the positions that you are into? What are some of the key biases and tough decisions you have had to make to traverse the leadership ladder? Maybe, Sunanda, you want to begin?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you again. And, when I think about this and I remember that it's almost 25 years since I started work, it makes me feel rather old. But keeping that aside, I think when I look back, it's been a fantastic journey. And when, I started work, very often I was the only woman in the room full of men. So I think that in itself was an interesting challenge to be part of, though more or less I did have men folk who were very kind and trying to be inclusive. But the biases and the challenges did exist. I think back then, especially for a young woman to be starting her journey, her career, there are many biases that come in the way. The first one, especially if you are a decent looking female, if you're single, my god, that is several challenges all wrapped together. So I remember people, kind of, insinuating that, hey, good looks, woman has to be promoted. So that is something that you kind of, face in the beginning of your career as well. And of course, when you have 25 years of working and steady growth, then obviously those you don't care anymore what people say, and of course they also understand that it's more work than the gender or the looks. So that has been a challenge that I faced. And I think the other challenge that I faced is that I rose up the ladder pretty quickly. And, my first leadership role was when I was in my 20s, ending my 20s. And I got into this group, this leadership group, which had men who were more than 45 and 50 years of age. So not only was I a woman, I was a very young woman. So that also became a big challenge. So I think those are the apprehensions and the challenges that I have faced. But if I look back, I feel that it's not been unsurmountable. So I'm sure the other panelists will also have similar reactions. But you face challenges, and I think men have their own challenges as well. I think women face these particular, gender and age kind of challenges.
Great. Prasad, you want to take the cue from there?
Yeah, but having seen journalism for nearly 25 years now, and also having worked in another part of the media, which was event management, I should say that if I look at journalism, we actually have a gender balance, and which actually is, I should say, it skews more towards women than men. Okay, we are so fortunate that if I look just at brand equity across three platforms, which is television, print, and online, two of the three editors are women. Okay, at least 80 to 90% of all our employees working in the editorial of brand equity are women. So people like me are rather the exceptions than the rule. So that way I should say that maybe the findings of your study might be challenged a little if you were to look only at journalism as a kind of point. And if I look beyond our own organization, say if you scan the list of, say, advertising and marketing reporters, you will again find that at least 70% of the people, from editors to journalists, are all women. So that way, and I should also say that since you mentioned in my introduction about the two women who gave me a break in journalism, um, they were known as the Iron Maidens. Okay, people used to be really scared of the discipline, the rigor they got into the job. I would call them the great gamblers because they punted on me. But I see a lot of women leaders open to making decisions which can pay off. Okay, like I could have been a bad bet who could have quit within 1 or 2 years after they took me on, right? Or I could have just, so thankfully that didn't happen. So I guess they are good in taking a call for the long run. Uh, the other thing I also feel, now I should mention this, that and this is from the world of advertising. There was a time when I was still in college that I went in and chose that I should start uh, applying to all the ad agencies and give them copy tests. Out of the 10 agencies that I wrote to, just one of them responded. That was Lintas, which was probably the largest agency back then. And the leader who responded back then was Usha Bandarkar, who is a very respected creative professional. Okay, so she took the time out to write a letter which was very personal. And that's something that I actually kind of preserved and kept. I think if I search for it, even I'll find it even today. So that's the impact that women leaders have made on me personally. So I have no complaints. Over to you.
Aparna, your experience.
Prasad, and I come from journalism background, so I quite agree that the floor was always buzzing with us young women, old women, right, making our point and kind of outnumbering the men. Men when it came to journalism. I come from the Times of India. I worked there. I started my career there, so I have great fond memories of the place. And yes, a lot of very dynamic women shaped what the organization is today and what really print came to be. And while that was possibly the smoothest part, when I transitioned from being a journalist into what is now called Contech, right? You are a content and a technology professional, and when digital was the upcoming thing, and because I was a content person and not a tech person, right? I think for me the most difficult part was trying to fit into the boys' club, because the boys' club at that point, and it still continues to be in technology, is largely men. And while now in STEM you do see a lot of prominent women, and women at at all levels really having achieved and struggling it out, balancing everything, it wasn't the case back in 2006 2007. So when you had to make a point, firstly you're not directly a tech person, right, but you're bringing the perspective of a user, you're bringing the perspective of a business user. For you to be able to get an opportunity to open your mouth and voice an opinion, that became a problem, right? So it wasn't really about how old you were, how senior you were, right? It was just that because the tech domain is so much of this boys club, and then that becomes the big boys club, nobody really is giving you voice to to even for you to get an opportunity to raise your hand and even make a point, right? That became a huge difficult thing. So I think transition, when you change over your fields, and from print I went to digital, which was then the big thing evolving. There being able to, and then then of course that thing comes, right? अरे तो ठीक है ना, बाद में बात कर लेना, बाद में बताने, let's finish the tech discussion, right? So firstly sometimes because of what how old you are at that time, you're asked to shut up, right? Because as by nature I'm not a very aggressive person, and I will wait for my turn to talk, which sometimes would never come, right? That would again be held against me, right? I mean, I don't want to attribute anything of my gender here, but really that is how it went. Sorry, I got a little. I was
No,
suddenly
no,
full
no.
zoom on the screen. So yes, but yes, things have been good, and I think all of us collectively over the last 15 years have really changed the space for STEM. In India for women, so I'm glad where from where we started, we've come a really long way.
Great. So that actually brings me to the next question. So it's an established problem, right? And more so when you both, Aparna, Sunanda, and Prasad, when you kind of agree in the fact that journalism has a big kitty, but then people like Aparna, when they transition, you see a significant difference of how there's a different level of treatment. So Nanda will agree because she's exactly come from the same problem, Aparna, and I have been fortunate to work with her. So I exactly know how, in the room full of sales leaders, I and Sunanda were possibly just the two leads struggling to make a point. So it's a problem that exists. But the point is, are we progressing enough, right? So that brings me to the next question. Do you think that there are enough steps done or are happening? Because suddenly post pandemic everybody started rushing on the DEI concepts, right? That became the real so to say purpose for multiple brands, including many communication companies. And I mean, to tell you the truth, for many this is a way to actually gain a lot of brand equity for themselves or for their organizations. And as I very candidly put across in multiple forums, I think a lot of lip service happening rather than real action. I just want to get into an insight of what do you think could be some simple steps that organizations can do instead of promising big? Because let's start small and then get into bigger actions. So maybe Aparna, your experience from what you have established, because yours is a completely women-centric platform, right?
Yeah. Yes, and while we have a fantastic founder in Tarun Katyal, it is a very, very women heavy team. The app has been designed by women. Our lead iOS developer is a woman. The product team has largely all women. The community team, the marketing team is all women. So, we have this room full of feminine energy all the time, outnumbering men all the time. So you're right. I think for me the first step is that this has come in conversation, right? Because if it's not in conversation, it's taboo. It's something that we all want to keep at the back of our mind and don't really want to bother about. So the fact that there is enough and more conversation, now whether that simply stays at lip service or whether it comes into action is then now upon all of us as leaders, right? But having the right conversations, bringing it to forums, making everyone aware of this, right? Not just the top management, but for those who these initiatives are being done. You don't want it to be like maybe some government initiative which all the government babus know, and it's all there on some website, but the real beneficiaries don't know what this really is about, right? So one, bringing it in conversation, common knowledge about it is our first step to getting this done. So initiatives like what you are taking up, many other initiatives contribute to this. Secondly, whether it is having to bring back women into the workforce, whether it is making sure that there are no obvious biases that come in, whether it is making sure that it's always a talent first organization, and whether it's making sure that there is no discrimination for some very silly yet obvious reasons, right? I mean, because you went on maternity leave, you are not going to get a promotion this year because your maternity leave was for 6 months. So for a large part of the appraisal year, you were not present, right? And now there is talk to even extend that to 9 months. I dread the fact if something, if it goes to 9 months, it will possibly just wreak havoc on our mental state when we go back to work, right? Because suddenly it's like you've almost lost a year of your life. So many of these things, but yes, bringing this in conversation, taking concrete steps, one thing at a time, take up one initiative or two, see it through, see it is implemented, see that the real beneficiaries have taken advantage of it, and then move on from there. That will just make sure from lip service it goes to real implementation.
That's great. I think you touched upon a great point, Aparna. And I remember the last survey also spoke about this whole problem about the mindset, right? Because it's the mindset that really stops people when women are trying to return to the workforce after a break. There's no succession planning that is in place in the HR's precedence of the top priorities. I mean, possibly it is there, but it's not come to an extent. So we possibly need to get into those actions, because now we are seeing essentially after the pandemic, there are so many women who are also joining us from tier 3, tier 4 cities, where where digitalism means connecting them, but because they took a break, there is no follow up plan for that. So thanks so much, Aparna, for that point. Moving on, Sunanda, I want to just from that point, there's a link up on one of our key insights from the survey. We talk about creating an ecosystem where women can lead. There's a leadership ladder or a leadership progression plan that often organizations build. And while they like to say so, our survey actually brought in some very startling facts. We found that 69% of women form less than 20% in the leadership ladder in today's day. And in fact, 33% of survey respondents have said that in their organization, it's less than 5%. If you see the numbers, it's very astonishing, because at one end we are saying that in the communication sector we are having a pretty heavy ratio of women. uh, what is happening? I mean, why aren't they leaders today? Why do you think there is a problem in them going to the leadership position? Just wanted to get some thoughts there, Sunanda.
Look, I think a lot of policies, etc., that there are in the organization has to come top down. So the leaders of the organization, the management has to be pro inclusiveness, pro gender equity, pro ensuring that there is balance within the board, ensuring that there is balance in the management team, etc. So there has to be all of that coming right from the top. Having said that, that's not where the responsibility ends. I think it's a dual responsibility. The women, the workforce, which comprises of women, they have to be equally responsible towards their own leadership career as well. And I feel that, most of us very often get caught up in what the organization should be doing and the management should be doing and the leaders should be doing, and we often skip and ignore what we as women, as workers, should be doing ourselves. So if you see this gap between the number of women, and you yourself said that communications, marketing, etc., is a field that a lot of women get into, but there is a big drop when it comes to leadership. Now, how much of that can be attributed to women themselves maybe exiting from the race of leadership? That could be one very critical factor in this this small number as well. And of course, I mean, we've been talking about organizations making it tough for women, making it difficult for them to be really climbing the success ladder. But I feel that we have to first also address, instead of kind of very squarely saying that, hey, the problem lies with you, we have to actually start doing with what we can do. And if we take it, if we hold ourselves responsible, we will be, it will, now, and let me bring another perspective. I lead an organization, or I co-lead an organization now. For me, a leader is somebody who is doing his or her role the way it is supposed to be done. I couldn't give a damn whether it's a man or a woman. So, it doesn't matter. In fact, we are the other way around. And I think Aparna also spoke about it. We are 80% women. And I at times feel that, we're doing a disservice to men and not including them enough in our workforce. And, there has been a time when we actually started opening our eyes and saying, hey, we need more men also to be part of our organization. So, when we put out a position, it's not like I'm looking for CVs from men or interviewing men. It is, I'm looking for the best candidate. And if I find a woman to be the best candidate, I would be a terrible entrepreneur if I actually let her be and hired a man instead. So, I think we need to also have a bit of a balanced perspective in terms of ensuring that we as women take onus of where we are. There
Right. So
are, of
what
course, there are
uh,
ceilings, there are challenges, but we have to be accountable as well.
so what you're saying, if I'm hearing it right, that women need to be accountable for their growth. But what I also feel is that there is a role that the management and especially the HR leaders play in terms of building policies which are friendly enough for them. To that point, Prasad, I want to come to you and understand. Again, it can be a little difficult to say that hey, this is a policy very significant to my organization and maybe it's not for the others, because today every organization has a different HR policy. But largely speaking, especially big problems like what we are discussing today, return to workplace post maternity, or say a elderly care break, or say a genuine problem, a health problem, we don't see that that seems to not be established well. What do you have to say when it comes to the gaps that are existing there?
So, I would also kind of start by saying that empathy shouldn't be like gender specific. Empathy has to exist across. Okay, it cannot be depending on how you look, what's your age, etc., which other panelists have touched upon already. Having said that, the organization that I work for, the entire HR team is full of women, but are they championing the cause of the women employees in the organization now. And what I heard from Lena Nair, one of, I think, the tallest women leaders that this country has ever produced, and this is what Lena told me many years back, okay, when she was still working in India. She told me that women are sometimes the biggest enemies of other women employees. And there are two reasons which I kind of instantly recall. She said either the mother-in-law syndrome gets into the women leader who's in the mid-level, or it is that queen bee syndrome, that there can't be another queen bee in the room. So, and both of these actually destroy the case of other women kind of, growing in that organization. Of course, there are boys' clubs and they continue to thrive, but there is no reason why there cannot be more and more women clubs which are getting more and more powerful. That's it.
Cool. So I think that's a very pertinent point. The reason I brought that question is, one of the key findings says that personal commitments seem to be a biggest hurdle, and personal commitment could be of any. I mean, it is not, again, it's gender agnostic, but what you rightly said, that if there is a certain way of approaching those problems, it has to be across the organization and not particularly for women. What we are focusing today, of course, is about women, and we continue to bring that point because there's a lot that we feel is a big hindrance when it comes to personal commitment. Now that brings me to another very pertinent point. We are almost in the month of May and early June. All of us are waiting for our appraisal. We work hard to earn more money, to get more remuneration. One of the biggest challenge that our survey brought to light is the kind of remuneration. So, the findings are saying that 59% women feel they are not treated equally as compared to the male counterpart, and this is purely in terms of the way the pay gaps exist. Of course, there is a lot of debate on this part, and again, this is something. If you go and check with an HR, they will say that, look, there are different skill sets, and we match to different skill sets the kind of pay package. So there is no clarity, but generally speaking, the survey really got down to understand, how the difference of the same amount of experience for a male versus a female, and surprisingly, it was a big problem that came to light. So I want to just get a view, maybe from the two ladies, what they think and why this problem exists, because somewhere this needs to be addressed.
Sananda, you want to go? I
No,
can.
Aparna, after you. It's okay.
So yes, the gender pay gap exists. It's unfortunate. We would have thought that it doesn't exist for influencers and content creators. We recently pulled out some data, and we have enough and more data with us at Koto that says that even in social media, women are paid less. Women earn the same for the same type of posts or for similar kind of content. They end up earning less than their male counterparts. I think some of the ways to address it would be one, having a lot more transparency, right? Because the whether or not this is true and how much of it is true, right? Data and transparency in communication can really address these gaps. If I'm similarly experienced and if my performance has been the same, if my skill level is the same, right, then there is no need that I should be differentiated on the basis of my gender, right? And Sunanda made a very pertinent point when she said that for each one of us as professionals, and sometimes more for us as women, right, because we are also primary caregivers for our family, that role cannot be taken away from us, and I don't think most of us even want to give away that role, right? Sometimes it is that much more difficult for us to be able to prove ourselves, right, to be able to make it amply clear that yes, we are also worth equally this. From an organization point of view, basing your appraisals, basing your, pay hikes, basing promotions on a very transparent mechanism. I think one of the things I've never liked about organizations is never discuss. Appraisal is such a hush hush thing. Post appraisal, you make the most enemies, right? Like nobody remains your friend. Your good friend suddenly becomes your enemy the second day the letter has arrived, right? That happens because there has been not enough conversation, very open, regular conversation, no transparency, and there has been not a clear data point which we all understand. If you see in me lacking as a resource, I need that feedback saying these are the points that you can do better on, and come up to this level, and then we can, then these doors open for you. I don't think these conversations happen enough, and therefore I guess, a lot of this pain that okay, there will be this pay gap happens. And of course there are larger level questions, and I'm sure I'm not the most expert at it to answer, but yes, so Nanda, I'm sure you have more to add.
Thank you, Aparna. So, like you rightly said, it's such a hush hush area. It's very difficult to actually get comprehensive or concrete data points around this claim that, there is a big disparity or a pay gap, men versus women. Though, of course, I've also read a lot of surveys, and it's a kind of a globally established fact that women get paid 5 to 10% less than their male counterparts. Now, you know. One, I would love to see more data around it. Two, from my personal experience, frankly, I I don't think I faced a similar challenge. I don't think like I said, when I became a manager for the first time, I was 15 years younger to my male counterparts there. Now they were far more experienced than me, and of course, I must have been getting paid far less than they were getting paid. So, pay has a lot of criteria to it, and Aparna also talked about it. There is experience, there is skill set, and Mo, you also spoke about it. There are many factors that come together to determine your compensation. And I keep saying this, and I said this at a different forum as well. I am not the one asking for equitable pay. I don't believe in equitable pay. I believe in fair pay. If I, as a woman, am giving far more than a male counterpart is giving, why the hell should I ask for pay which is equal to that male counterpart? I should be getting paid far more. So, pay should be in sync with what you are delivering as a leader, with what you bring as a leader, with what problem you solve as a leader. And of course, it's a business end of the day, it's an enterprise end of the day. It should be in sync with what business or revenue you are responsible for as a leader. So I feel those are the key factors that should determine pay. And if anybody in this day and age, as a management or as an HR or as a person who has influence on these factors, is still using gender as a criteria, I think they're doing great disservice. So, my advice would be please stop immediately.
Can I
That
add a couple of
yes,
points?
absolutely. Prasad,
Okay,
go
so
ahead.
we are seeing a lot of hope in the horizon, if I may say that, particularly in the business of advertising agencies, where it's been a huge, problem for ages that, the pay gap. Uh, just a few months back, a Swedish agency, Forsman and Bodenfors, which is known for a lot of these renowned Volvo ads, especially, which many of you would have seen, they got themselves certified as a fair play workplace. And this is a global certification which ensures that across not just in the same organization the gender pay parity happens, but across all offices across the world they'll ensure that people are paid fairly. Now I think that's a very good development. The second is in India. Just I think about less than a month back, there was a women only agency that was launched. Now, this is, I think, another opportunity to correct the gender pay disparity if there exists, if any, because this agency, which is going to hire only women employees, and I'm sure they can afford to correct the imbalances. Maybe they cannot do that across the industry, but they will set standards which will make great talent come towards their agency, and hence force other agencies to kind of go and course correct. So these were my couple of points. Okay.
No, that's great. I think each one of you bring in a very valid point, and much has to be done. But another very pertinent area, which I think kind of enables women, and is something that was a very important theme for us to pursue, was about mentoring, about training. We are seeing that more and more women today are being bold to take initiatives, which is off the league, right? They want to innovate, they want to really come up with their own charter of leadership. But not everybody is, upskilled, and suddenly, technology has taken up a new shape altogether across the industries, right? So they are also not upskilled. What we found, interestingly, is that not enough is happening on that part also. 40% of women agree that there is no set training. There's no model that's been established. On and off, there are many such courses, or e-programs which their organizations do recommend, but there's no structure. Just want to get your thoughts on what can be done. What are some of the things that possibly can enable women? Maybe again, Prasad, I want to start with you, because you spoke about a larger share of women in your organization.
See, again, training is always depending on leaders. Like, for example, when there was a training program, and this is not about people who are returning to the workplace after a break, but this I'm talking about training initiatives generally. The people we chose to be sent to the training program were the ones who showed the most promise. And this was not based on gender. However, what we found, and I think I'm sure all of you would be happy, was the women in the room were the ones who showed a lot more promise, that if we gave them the right kind of training, they would actually fly much more higher. So, and this is particularly a trend that we've been seeing with the youngsters, people in their 20s. I find that women bring in a lot more commitment to the workplace. The guys seem to be a little less committed. And maybe this is a very, very kind of generic statement. It may be wrong, but then at least this is what I'm seeing in the last 2 or 3 years, particularly post the pandemic.
Right. So, Prasad, that is perhaps, an established way of how your organization is also approaching the problem. But, what about career breaks? People are coming back and they need training. Aparna, you want
See,
to chime in
see,
there?
okay, please, sorry if I may just make a
Yeah, no
small
problem.
limited point. Okay, I think this is the day and age where you should not depend on any organization to train you. If you're coming back after a break, you better come well prepared. I think the onus is as much on you as much as it is
Yes.
on anybody
And
else.
I'd quite agree with Prasad on that, right? See, at the end of the day, one has to understand that that at an organization level, this can only be templated, right? Very few organizations, and especially as you go bigger, may be able to tailor make training for you. All of us who have been able to rise to the top, you look at the journey of any leader, whether a man or a woman, it has been on the back of their self commitment. Are you upskilling yourself? Are you abreast of what is happening in your own domain? Are you aware of what is happening in your adjacent domains? If you want an opportunity to rise higher in the same workplace, any vertical movement, go to any other industry, are you aware enough? Those have been the most successful people. Now we cannot just leave it. See, I think our biggest problem is we are always externalizing our problems, right? I want my employer to do this for me. I want my manager to do this for me. I want my manager to come to me and have this conversation. If you're feeling a gap, if you're feeling that something is not fine, if you're not able to perform, how many times have you taken the initiative, right? Two of your mails may be ignored. Your third mail will not be ignored, right? Two of your conversations may not lead somewhere, right? Do you go enough prepared with this conversation? I think self growth, introspection is the key for growth for everybody, right? We can come up with any number of data points to show how bad the world is, right? But can we go with a glass half full approach and see how can I make my glass fuller, right? Than saying, okay, somebody's taking away water from me, or someone else came and sipped my water, this was supposed to be mine, right? So I think a more solution centric approach for each one of us will really help all of us grow.
And I
Great.
would, agree with both Prasad and Aparna completely. No two ways about it. I have seen situations or scenarios where we have tons of trainings, there are tons of resources available, and people are not using it. And I'm not saying men or women, I'm saying both. There have been so many resources made available and they're not being used. So trainings and upskilling has to come from within. It's a commitment to the self, and we're living in a day and age where there are so many resources available. You don't have to depend on any organization, any manager to upskill yourself. There are Coursera, there is Udemy, there are so many of these platforms available, and you can get so many trainings at very affordable prices as well, and many of them are even free. LinkedIn has so many resources as well. So gone are the days of dependence on organizations for upskilling. Upskilling has to come from within. It has to come from your sense of direction of where you want to go, what you see your future to be, and you have to start walking that path. So, totally, upskilling, your responsibility, our responsibility, self responsibility.
Great. I think we've touched upon some very interesting points. We spoke about remuneration. We spoke about training. We spoke about how it's important to build leaders from within. It's been an interesting discussion with the three of you. In the interest of time, I would now like all of you to summarize and maybe leave one important thought for the audience. One key takeaway, Prasad, from your end to the audience.
See, my key takeaway would be don't be obsessed with gender. Just reward talent for what it is. Don't get kind of, and I'm sure if people, all leaders, genuinely believe that their organizations have to perform, they will promote the talent that works in the interest of the organization rather than towards the personal bias. Now, that would be my takeaway.
Aparna, yourself?
I think for me, it would be to make sure everything that we want to create a change for about, right? Everything that we want to really change, we should first bring it in conversation and bring it in action. Anything that you want to do for yourself is all in your own hands. Do not depend upon any organization, any manager, anybody to do that for you. So, yeah, I think my two cents.
Sunanda, your key takeaway?
Uh, well, for the organizations, my key takeaway would be, it's high time that you not only became fair, but also became known as being fair. So be obviously fair, and be because this is a sensitive issue. Lean a little towards favorably towards women. Uh, it cannot hurt, and if you're helping, there is a gap, it we need your help to bridge that gap, so please do that. And for the women in the workforce, I would say that don't get too hung up on your gender. Forget the fact that you're women. You are there in the workforce, you're there to have a career of your own. Don't expect concessions as a woman, don't seek concessions as a woman. The minute you go seeking concessions, you're actually placing yourself as an individual who is not at par, and that's doing great disservice to your own self. So don't seek concessions, go all out, make the best of it, behave like a leader, and you act like a leader. You bring in the you bring in the value that a leader does. The organization has no choice but to treat you as a leader. So you have to earn your respect, and the minute you do, you will be treated the way you want to be treated. So that is my two bits for the women in the workforce there.
Great. Um, some great responses and questions also coming in as we speak. I'm going to take a few of them. We may not be able to answer all, but I think one of the comments that Atul Takle has made is that most MNCs have women leaders in communications. That does not seem like a discrimination. Any comments on that statement? I know we've spoken a lot that let's not be hell bent on gender, but we still have to acknowledge that there is a problem that exists.
So I would act in this. I mean, Atul, coming from an MNC background, I have seen, yes, communications. A lot of women are in the leadership position, but I think this is not just about women in communication. This is about women in general. So there is a general notion that women are discriminated against, and that's what we are trying to address here.
There's another question from Lisha Bajaj. Could you please let us know where we can find the survey report? The survey report will be live in the next 30 minutes on our handles, Lisha. So you could go ahead and see the details. We will be more than happy to give you more details in case you want. You could write to any of our LinkedIn or Twitter direct messages. We could send you more information on that. Okay, one question that I have been itching to ask from the great leaders I have today. If you had to see India really come up with somebody like a Leena Nair, like we spoke about Leena Nair, we're talking about Leena Nair in the corporate India. If we had to think of a Leena Nair in the communications fraternity, what is it? I mean, what will it take for her to really get to that level? If there are 3 points we had to advise to our growing mid management women professionals, what is that one thing that each one of you would like to recommend? I know there is a key takeaway we gave, but this is like a recommendation from the mentors like you.
So,
Okay.
no, sorry, yeah, go ahead, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Apollo, please. After you.
I would say be your own Leena Nair, right? Because what the definition of achievement is only true for yourself, right? One doesn't need to compare journeys. One really does not need to compare where someone else, what the opportunity someone else may have got. Each one of us have our own path to success, to fulfillment, to a happy life, and chart that path for herself. Lena is successful because she took her life in her own hands and made her own decisions herself, took self responsibility for where she is today. And Prasad has interviewed her. I can see him nodding with in agreement, right? So yeah, that's my only thing. Be your own Lena.
Absolutely, Aparna. I couldn't have said it better. I also feel exactly the same way. You decide what your goals are. See, nobody can become a leader or become successful without putting in the hard work or the sacrifices. That's a given. So, man or woman, irrespective, decide what success means to you. Decide what your destination is, and stick to the path. And do the necessary upskilling. Do what is required to stay on that path. Put in the hard work, and you shall reach there. There is no rocket science to that.
So I instantly recall something that Lena had mentioned, and I don't know why this interview keeps coming back to me. 1.5 months after she had delivered a child, Lena was back in office apparently. Okay, and a woman employee who was probably junior to her walked to Lena and said, ma'am, please do not do this, because if you do this, they will expect all of us to do this. And that's when Lena realized that maybe I'm spoiling it for other women by trying to kind of overachieve or kind of do overdo it, and I think that that balance, and each one has their own life goals, so please do not compromise on it just because you have to become the next big Indra Nui or the Lena Nair, because they have sacrificed a lot. I If you really want to sacrifice all that they gave up or more than what they gave up, please go ahead, do it. But don't be obsessed with success so much that it affects your mental health, something that keeps coming back in all conversations. And I think the more it is kind of said in forums like these, the better, because success is important, but it cannot be an end goal in itself.
Amazing. I think it's a great takeaway for me personally. I feel some very interesting discussions have happened. I think the audience would have loved this panel. I have the last question which we are taking for today. It's come from our council member Priya Bendre. How would media and communication entities benefit from getting fair play certifications? Any one of you who wants to take up?
The answer is obvious, isn't it?
I think she may want to get a little bit of a detail here. You want to explain,
See, a
Prasad?
fair pay certification obviously would mean that a lot of good talent will start looking in your direction. It's a huge benefit, right? Because people who feel that their organization is discriminating on the basis of pay based on gender, they would all start looking at your company because you have a fair pay certification.
Oh, this
And
this is the word play, not pay. Sorry, getting fair play certifications.
okay,
So, which
but what
means
I
are they
spoke about
playing?
was I don't know if a certificate like that exists though, because the certification that I spoke about was fair pay.
So I think what Priya is
I
indicating
would I
is
would rather pass it. Yeah, I would let the other two
yeah.
take a shot at that.
So basically, it's about I
Apparently,
think
it is fair pay.
it is fair pay. Okay, okay. I think there was a typo initially. Okay, great. So I think Prasad, you've addressed that. We've also spoken about some of the key takeaways that the audience should take. We've also said what it needs to become to be successful, but as the panelists said, don't kill yourself in the name of success. Mental health and taking care of yourself is equally important while charting your success and the career. Thank you so much, panelists. Each one of you have brought in some great insights from what you are doing, what you think the future will be like. I think we are extremely humbled to have you today, and I'm sure there is enough and more conversations that will continue with our survey effort. And I would request each one of you to follow that thread and continue this. For now, we take your leave from all of us at WICCI PR and Digital Marketing Council. Have a great day and an evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much
much
for
for
having
having
us
me.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.